Good Monday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the Monday Market Monitor here on Real Talk. We are live across Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seaville Network. We're presented by Yes Realty Partners and Keller Williams Alliance, powered by Closure Title and Settlement Company, Ally Property Management, and our friends at Segura Solar. Today's show, dynamic. Keith and Jonas Smith recharging for the week, doing some masterminding and business planning. Keith specifically, will be back in the saddle a week from today. But folks, we have two fabulous guests in Quentin Beckham and Nikki Chambliss to keep the level of energy at an all-time high. Judah Wickhauer, let's go to that three-shot, my friend, and let's welcome QB and Nikki Chambliss to the show. Good morning, friends. How are you?
I'm good.
Good morning. Yeah,
good morning.
Doing great. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. How was your weekend, guys? New Year's plans? How was everything? Or New Year's resolutions, I should say?
Resolutions. What? No, I do. So I do use the new year to kind of reset some things. It just feels like a natural way to do that. And I do tend to not call them resolutions because I just don't like it.
I agree with that. I'm very much in agreement. I mean, if it was important, you would just make the change during the year.
Thank you. Yes.
Is that what you're alluding to?
Well, that, and it just gets annoying after a while. It's almost like an abuse of the word at one particular time of year. I don't know. Language and words matter. The
resolution is almost synonymous with pivot in 2021, overused and overplayed.
I have no idea what you could be talking about there, Jerry.
I know, right. QB, if we can go on the one shot on Quentin Beckham, we'll see looking quite sharp with a custom tailored shirt right there.
Fancy.
Looking very good, my friend. Kipasa, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy. Most people seem to have electricity this morning.
Yes.
And over the weekend, so that was exciting. There's less snow on the ground. You don't slip and slide so much when you drive in here, so this is a good Monday.
But the adolescent in Quentin Beckham appreciates and adores the snow nevertheless.
I'm ready for the next snowfall, I know. I don't want everybody to lose electricity.
Maybe the only one?
I don't want everybody to go through what they went through. That was not what I asked for. But so much of my life is like that, where it's not quite what you asked for.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. Again, we'll give props to Judah, our director. We have some comments coming in, which we will get to on Twitter here in a matter of moments. So, guys, the chatter now should be a little bit about January, the snow clearing, and markets potentially heating up, or did they never cool down?
They never cooled down. They did not cool down. They did not even cool down for this past week with all the power outages. I had agents who had to turn down business because they didn't have power or internet and couldn't actually do what they needed to do for the clients while also maintaining life and some semblance of sanity, but and had to refer that out to people who had power and means to do so.
How'd you guys do that?
Very carefully. No, truly, it's a matter of we're all pretty connected here, right? We have our people we know that we go to. We're a really nice, tight-knit community here in real estate, period, right? It's one of the cool things about the Charlottesville area.
In fact, last week on the CAR Facebook page,
yes.
which the private page for realtors, there were multiple offices saying, we have power, we have food, we have internet, whatever you need, just show up.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we will welcome you. And so there was a lot of, as is typical in our local association, there was a whole lot of open doors and help offered to make sure people could take care of themselves, or maybe just show up and charge things and have a hot cup of coffee and experience what it's like to live in heat.
More challenging ecosystem for agents, early COVID or the last week of no power in Central Virginia?
Are we ranking? Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Oh, can we have a tie?
You could have said, you're saying last week was pretty brutal.
Yes, truly, for a lot of people. I just nonstop I'm having people talk about how COVID's running through their family and their households, and thankfully it's this, as far as symptoms go, minimal, right? So it's not so severe. Like maybe a year ago, this conversation would have been very different, right? But it is still wreaking havoc on people's systems and lives and routines and school and work, right? So it's been a crazy week, and I'm really impressed with how people have pulled through and are still pulling through that.
Grayson Smith's got a comment specifically for Nikki Chambliss. We'll get to that, Grayson. Do you have Scottsville ties?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so he
Absolutely.
watches the show and knows that. Very interesting
nice.
right here. Before we get to Grayson's comment over there, Quentin Beckham, how did you see the agent community, besides opening the doors to their offices to competing brokerages? I think we call that a rising tide is good for all ships.
Conscientious competition.
Yeah.
My favorite phrase.
Conscious capitalism.
You know, you're always going to work with same people when you're in a small community. It does you well to be good to them.
How'd you see the market tick up or down last week with the electric issues?
You know, I think we had people stall, but not in any way that's going to register. It's only a week. You know, you were asking earlier, which is worse. I actually think the first part of COVID was worse because we didn't know what to expect. Just about everybody that is around in our brokerage anyway, they know how to deal with power being out. They know how to deal with snow. They've gained a knowledge base for what to do when they are sick and test positive for COVID. And so there's just a lot less anxiety and unknowns, whereas it's just sort of moving forward. And in that very first part, we were like, how do we not give this to everybody? How much distance is enough distance? Does the air conditioning have to be off? Do we let anybody touch doorknobs? There was 1,000 questions, and now there's just like 150.
150. I like that. Better than 1,000, no doubt. Quentin Beckham, well said. So this is from Grayson. He said, Jerry, from shows past, I remember Nikki being from the Scottsville area. Can she give us a snapshot on how that area is doing from a real estate standpoint and electricity standpoint? Good question.
Oh, shoot. So I don't know from an electricity standpoint. I keep seeing a lot of my ties like on Facebook talking about how they've got power now, but I also know that area probably still is without quite a bit. But what I do know, and I hope this is okay, but I do know Baines has had coffee running and warmth and heat, and they offer that to the community. They're a wonderful mainstay there. So, and I'm sure they're not the only place. They're just the place that I have the closest ties to.
I'll throw this to you guys.
It's a coffee shop.
Do we think that almost a week without power for the region has any influence on the real estate market, similar to COVID amplifying the need for fiber and quality internet in 2020 and 2021?
I think it certainly affects the whole house generator market.
Oh my gosh. We put a phone call in, you know what they told us? Maybe July.
Wow.
Yeah, get in line.
Yeah.
That's what they said. And as I'm looking through the Dominion power outage map and the other ones that I can find, it looks like we're down to a handful of customers that are out.
Nice.
I would imagine due to, events, lines from the street to their house.
Yeah, mainly Louisa, Green, Orange, and the Barbersville area, just a small portion in Albemarle County currently out. Where are you seeing some potential interest that perhaps was not there from a real estate standpoint, Nikki, a couple years ago till today?
Oh, well, I think a lot of people have made the choice to go just a little further than they thought they would, right? We have that conversation regularly, though. But that's just an ever ongoing growing thing. And when you have prices as high as they are in one area, that's going to happen.
And
Absolutely.
I think more than a week of snow and an electrical outage, people's concern about mortgage rates is probably having a much bigger impact than anything we went through over the last 5 days.
Yeah.
It's upticking, no doubt. The 10-year yield upticking, which is a reflection of the 15 and 30-year fixed mortgage. Quentin, are we seeing a slimmer buyer pool by the day? Are we seeing refinances kind of going by the wayside? Your prediction of what's to come?
Certainly, as rates go up, you'll have fewer refi loans going through because why? You need a pretty good breadth in the percentage. And I think a lot of people have spent the last 2 years cashing that out and doing their refis. So I would imagine those will get hit. I think as we see interest rates go up, and we're expecting a pretty solid 3/4 to a point this year.
Which is substantial.
There's still amazingly low interest rates. So it's substantial in comparison to what we had. We're only a year away from the all-time low, and we're not that much higher than the all-time low. Which I think this time last year was 2.65 on a 30-year fixed.
So here's what's interesting, and I'm curious of your take on this, Quentin. The idea is if Powell and the Federal Reserve raise rates, it could check inflation. And if inflation is checked, that means we may have some more purchasing power at the grocery store, at restaurants, the bar, retail outlets, whatever it may be. On the flip side, if rates go up, we have less buying power from a real estate purchasing standpoint. Any idea or any thoughts, crystal ball, if those may offset each other, Or are we seeing simply that the increase in rates is going to diminish the buyer pool, which means perhaps we get back to a stabilized market and inflation is here to stay forever?
I don't know that there's any one hard equation that you can use, because one does not always mean the other, and it certainly doesn't always mean the other in an individual's transaction. I do think part of why you are seeing inflation is part supply chain, but it's also because we've seen wages go up. And they've gone up at a rate that is a lot better than they have gone up the years before. I don't know that I personally necessarily believe there's such a thing as the Great Resignation, certainly not how it's hyped up to be. But there is a lot of granularity at a local level with how people are hiring, what they're hiring for, how they offer it, and how that compensation goes. I know we've certainly gone through that in our own businesses.
Mm-hmm. How so?
We went through and we evaluated everybody. I don't think there's anybody working for me now that doesn't make more than they did a year ago, because we raised some expectations. It's a higher bar now, and so we want to
raise expectations. You're going to make some more money, and
you're going to make some more money, and
you're going to produce a little bit more. That seems pretty reasonable to me.
Be present more. We're trying to pay. Not that they never did this, because I don't want it to sound like they were sitting there looking at the adding machine saying, oh, well, I've met my commitment level now, because that's really not what happened. But as we look through the changes that we've gone through over the last 2 years, which are a lot harder to see when you're doing it virtually and a lot easier to see once we were back, then you're starting to equate what were we getting for what we paid for before, what are our expectations now, and what are those worth?
Ooh, so I'm very curious about that. So you felt output was a little down during the virtual setting?
Oh my gosh, how could you be the same virtually? Like there was no way.
That's what I felt.
There's a certain energy level to being in person that is nearly impossible to recreate.
Amen. Amen. Kirby Robinson says hello to you. Keith is watching. You're supposed to be recharging. Keith, we're getting Michael Bullock offering some questions, some comments coming in. What are your thoughts on this topic, Nikki Chambliss?
Oh, hold on. The hiring, the wage? What are we talking about now?
We're talking about
We've covered
virtual,
a lot of things here.
The higher energy expectations for 2022.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think virtual makes a big difference when we're talking about energy. And we're talking specifically, I think, about our industry, because I do think it depends greatly on what it is you're doing. I think a lot of places benefited greatly from being able to go virtual, and hopefully will stay that way to some degree. It's been a really life-changing thing, and I think in a positive way as far as being virtual.
Do you think people are ready to get back, QB? They're ready to get back around their peers, around their friends, their colleagues.
I think everybody's ready to be more social. I think how they're being social is a little more thoughtful. I was talking to my circle of friends, which we hang out a lot, and if you go back 3 years ago, it was 5 times the amount that we're doing it right now. We're also shifting where we hang out, so it's more in people's homes than it is restaurants.
Elena Mangione, hello and welcome to the show.
Elena, my friend, welcome.
I love Elena Mangione. We miss you. We love you. We can't wait to see you here in person. Anytime you want to come, we're happy to host.
We had a Fast and Furious backgammon contest last night.
Oh, Elena, put that in perspective. I didn't know you were a backgammon guy.
I didn't know either until she made me play.
I bet you were good at it.
We tied. It was even,
nice.
Steven.
All right.
We tried to break the tie.
Your first time playing.
Not my first time playing, but it's been so long ago it might as well be my first time playing.
Are you a backgammon lady?
I have never played.
It's a fun.
I do not know what this is at all, actually.
Huge fan of backgammon over here myself. All right, so what are your thoughts? What are your agents saying? You, Nikki, have your pulse on the market as a team leader at Keller Williams, where you're offering infrastructure support, consultation support, some vision to many of the team members there. What's the pulse? What are the boots on the street saying to you?
A lot of it's just deciding, hey, what can I do this year to up my value add to people if that's needed. Some people, there's nothing more they can do because they've already got that going on, right? But that's always a thing to reevaluate. And as we are starting a new year, that's one of those times we do it. So doing that and just trying to find a way to help people, especially as it is hard to find homes in this market. Managing those expectations. Hey, we totally understand that you're moving from somewhere in the Northeast and coming towards Charlottesville. You might be a little surprised at our prices, but this is the market value of homes here, and here is why, and here's what you can expect for this process and how I'm going to help you through that, right?
What's the chop in the markets doing to confidence at all? Are you seeing that impacting confidence? And by the chop, I'm talking talking Wall Street. January's had a little bit of rough start. That's fair to say.
Yeah, I don't know that it really affects 95% of what we do. Because 95% of what we do is people with homes for their families to live in. And it's a game that has one, personal consequence, and two, it's a much longer term different point of view than if you're worried about what's going on in stock markets and playing with those. Certainly something super dramatic in the stock markets, a Black Friday-like crash could certainly have an effect, but that's not what we've seen up to now.
Is that same you're hearing?
Oh, absolutely. No, it does not have an immediate direct impact on what most of what we do is.
So we got a similar playing field as last year then. We got no inventory.
We do, and I would encourage buyers too. Remember that as mortgage interest rates go up, it pressures sellers on their price point because...
Let's go down that road.
What's the value of a house you can't sell?
There you go.
0. And so the interplay works on both sides. The pressure is not all one-sided. And so sellers that have really done their homework and are working with a really well-thought-out, strong counselor will recognize this and choose a price range that's within the ability of buyers to pay and take into account all these other factors that feed into it.
You're not alluding to shift to buyer's market, though.
Oh, no.
Okay, you're alluding to
No.
potentially more stability.
No, I'm alluding to avoiding a market that is in nobody's best interests.
Okay.
Because you can price things where it's a seller's market if you're a seller that's living in the market. If your concept of how you're going to sell the house is completely out of the market, nobody wins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me throw this to you for the sake of a talk show. People are returning slowly to office. Will we see less of the out-of-market buyer in Central Virginia, which could return perhaps the favor or the edge to the in-market buyer in Central Virginia? Because right now, the out-of-market buyer has a hell of a lot of leverage on his side or her side, especially compared to the in-market buyer.
I think that there's a fair argument to be made that everything that might, as you say, slowly return to in-office and or hybrid, that also means slowly retain out-of-office and hybrid. And so all the things that might work to change that are also on some other side of this yin and yang, allowing people to work remotely more often. So we're just in a whole new world, and I think we have this expectation that things are going to go back to something else in the past, and that's not it. It's not what's going to happen. There are some truths that are true no matter what the market does, but the market itself has entered a new phase. We have a low inventory level that's not going to resolve soon, no matter how you do it. We have a new set of price points for any home across the country that is not going to suddenly evaporate. And we have a workforce that is sort of mutating into their next configuration. And so all of these possibilities are working together. We were talking last week about how some of this might work out and some of the options that would give people for how they work and live, which includes things like schooling and transportation and access. So I think there's so many things at once. It certainly is comforting to point to one thing and say, well, this is changing, so now I say this is what will be next week. But it's not true, because that one thing is one out of 100 things that are all different now that are not going to go back to the way they were.
Nikki Chambliss.
No, I agree. I don't think it's that simple. There are too many variables here, and it's not going to impact things in such a way that 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 things really are going to make that huge of an impact. And I really liked what Quentin said about we keep looking for things to go back to something that was before, but it's not going to.
So what is the new norm for real estate then? What is the new today, tomorrow, and the following year for real estate?
I think one of the new norms is you need somebody that's not just excited about real estate, but they're educated and they're professional, and they have either within themselves or surrounding them a backbone of experience.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, so we want to go down that road?
Because I think there is a level of complexity
that we've never seen before.
That is new.
Yeah, agreed.
I think there's a lot going on that we talk about have a trusted counselor. That counseling now expands beyond just the real estate transaction itself and just home inspections and just this and just that. It now includes things like, what is the internet content? How is this going to react? What are your transportation needs? What kind of jobs are you searching for? What do your kids want to be? The spectrum is a lot deeper. And so having somebody that is both educated, experienced, and really has committed to being the best they can be in an environment that supports and promotes that, I think is going to be really critical. And you have a variety of agents across the spectrum. I'm not trying to speak ill of anyone. I do think most agents you would talk to, I certainly feel like in the last 2 years, I've learned way more things, way more quickly about certain ways to do transactions. And we've had to embrace technology that's been around, but we've always ignored, in a way that has sped up the pace of change for realtors across the country.
So does that mean, and Nikki Chambliss, tough question for you, but a fair one, does that mean the hobbyist agent may be a thing of the past?
I don't know that it will be a thing of a past, but I do think that I have definitely seen people that I know be impacted by working with someone who this isn't their full-time
The
deal,
hobbyist
right?
agent.
Yeah, I have people that I know that have been. And you have to know the market to operate in this environment. You can't not know it. And we as realtors, we have to put our clients' best interest first above everything else. So if I'm working and I don't know what's going on in the market well enough, am I putting my client's interest first? No.
And I want to add some definition to, you said hobbyist agent, because I think that could be,
Yeah.
you know,
Misconstrued?
Define that, definitely.
There's
Let's
some
talk about
emotional
that.
content behind that.
Well, that's why I said it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's new. Is that a new thing you're doing on the show
That's
now?
why I said it.
Throwing out things just to generate reactions? Do we do that here?
That's what a host is supposed to do.
There are a lot of people that have super busy lives and work really hard and are good at real estate.
Yes.
So I don't want, if you're an agent out there listening to this show and you are a mother of 3 kids, or you are a single parent, male or female, and you're doing real estate, driving down the road in your van on your cell phone and typing out contracts on your laptop while sitting outside of the room that your kids are learning ballet, that doesn't mean you're a hobbyist
not a
agent.
hobbyist
That's
at all.
different. That's
So-
different.
No,
Yeah.
that's a
I'm
dual
talking about
career.
the one that's doing
If-
a transaction or 2 a year.
You know, so many people come to the idea of real estate because they're like, well, I really enjoy people and I love looking at homes.
Right. I like to see inside of people's homes.
You know, well, that we can define other less, you know.
How would you
up and
describe
up.
that agent?
Yeah, the peeping Tom of agents. You
I
know?
knew that. Like that's what Jerry just made it sound like. And you actually said it out loud. Thank you.
Maybe a better description than
I-
the peeping Tom.
I think it's great if you love houses because
That's
sometimes you need something easy to go along with all the hard work that you do. But don't be deceived that this is not hard work, that you can do better with experience and education. Part of why even last week in the snow, we had classes and agents came to the office
Yes.
and were
That's
in the
amazing.
classes because, one, they were really great classes, but two, there's a hunger to learn and to develop and to know and to grow, not just because they want to have bigger businesses and make more money, but also because they really want to take care of their clients. And we try our best to operate on the belief that if you do the right things, the money will follow. And the first right thing to do is know as much about every real estate transaction that you can so that you are the best guide and counselor as you move forward.
Okay, well said. So let me throw this. This is a natural response. How will the prioritization of technology impact the realtor space and being a successful agent long term? Because we seem to be, you guys are the experts, I'm just the guy with the microphone. We seem to be at this crossroads here where agents are having to, in a lot of ways, not reinvent themselves, but innovate to a level they never have had to. Is that fair?
I would describe it differently, but I don't think it's completely inaccurate.
Okay.
I don't think we're at a crossroads like we suddenly have to make decisions we've never made before. I think what's happening is we're being pushed to embrace things that we knew were coming at a faster rate. So, how many house unseen purchasers were there pre-COVID versus now? What was the percentage in the MLS that had 3D virtual tours that you could access that included a floor plan then versus now? Over time, you've seen the shift from how consumers access homes, how do they rate homes, what are their abilities to search for things. Technology is more and more and more integral to everything we do. Just like my experience driving my car, technology is more and more integral. This is not unique to us. It is the way the world is moving.
Nikki, what do you think?
I think it's 2022. I think technology has been there and strong for a long time. It's about time we caught up a little bit, right? And not just real estate, like the whole world. And that was one of the things that came from COVID. There's a lot that's been out there that's been things that it's crazy that we didn't use and take advantage of. And I'm glad we are.
I was on the phone for something personal for myself last week, and the company on the other end of the phone, a financial company, was like, "Yes, can you just fax that over to us?" And my brain just stopped because I was like, well, no.
Yeah. Do you guys have a
I can't
fax?
just PDF it to you.
Yeah. Do you have a fax at KW?
We do.
Our printing machine has a function that will imitate fax.
When's the last time KW's faxed something?
I don't know. I know how to use it.
I don't know how to use a fax.
And here's the thing, if you're going to fax something, there are apps for that. Truly.
Well, worst case scenario, wouldn't you, at the absolute worst case scenario, just take a picture with your phone and text it to somebody?
Well, unless it's a secure thing. But you know
okay.
what? There are
Okay,
also
fair.
secure email services out there.
When is the last time you've sent a fax?
Oh, God, I don't know. And when I did, it was online. And I probably just searched for some free fax service, and I did it really quick. I don't know. It's been years.
It's been absolute years. So when
Yeah.
you said that, were you like, am I talking to the right company?
My brain just stopped. Like I didn't answer. I didn't respond because I kept coming up with answers and discarding. So like, oh well, that's obnoxious, or that's really snide. I can't say that, and I really do want to send this over. And do I know how to fax something?
I don't know.
And did I just not hear you? Did
Google it,
you
it's
say
okay.
PDF and my brain heard fax? They don't sound the same. And so all of this happened over the course of like 15 seconds, and then the person on the other end was like, oh, or you could email it.
I mean, the next thing they're going to say
Yeah,
to you
I'll
is
do
tie
that.
it
didn't
is,
start with that?
It's like, yeah, I'll email it.
and then they followed up with, okay, if you can't fax it, tie the document to a pigeon's leg and have the pigeon fly to us, is the next thing they said. This is from Keith, who is watching. Keith, you're supposed to be recharging. From a historical perspective, 1987 till now, we have always had a larger buyer pool coming from other areas to ours. Lake Monticello is a prime example. In 2001 at Lake Monticello, 226 homes sold versus 321 in 2021. Just a stat that shows this volume of sales is not new. The price point is.
We also get a lot of boomerang people, right? They're here for one reason or another, whether it's they grew up here or they went to school here.
Explain to us what boomerang people mean.
Well, they leave and then they come back. Actually, I had a conversation with someone who's looking to be one of our new agents over the weekend and is looking to come back to the area and is really excited about it and was here, grew up here.
Ties to UVA?
Ties to, Scottsville and I think Greene County and just family here, right? Left for one reason or another and is now headed back because they miss it. And that happens a lot.
Quentin Beckham?
I agree. When you consider how low our inventory is, which is something we can say is new and probably won't change anytime soon, the percentage of buyers per house is going to stay really, really high, even if we do have some of those changes. So on the seller side of the market, you're a little bit insulated there, and then on the buyer side, you just really want to have a strong idea of what you're looking for. Focus in on that and just be ready to go. Don't show up with a knife to a gunfight.
Nikki Chambliss, what are you thinking?
No, all sorts of things. That's a dangerous question, Jerry.
What do you think of this show?
All sorts of things again. No, truly, I think where we end up landing with this conversation a lot of times is, hey, it's going to be competitive. It's going to be that way for a while now. We need to expect that, and you need to be ready for it. And if you're not, then conversations need to be had.
And I think how sellers think about the market can morph some too. So we were talking about winter. So traditionally, we've had a lot of sales drop off in winter. People don't list their homes and buyers don't look. And yet right now, there might be a lot of pros to listing your home in winter, particularly after the week we've had.
Yeah.
So, you've got...
What are those pros?
Well, there's less competition because there's fewer houses on the market total, although fewer now is not 150 fewer. Now it's like 20 fewer. There's still fewer houses on the market. I think you have a great opportunity in winter to really highlight things like energy efficiency, double pane windows, where the ducts vacuum, what kind of HVAC. Do you have a whole house generator?
Yes.
Like every house with a whole house generator today, if you're on the market, please advertise and underline and bold that in the description.
I was literally talking about this with my wife. I'll throw it back to you here. She said if we were ever going to buy a home again, it's going to have a generator. We're going to have to know about the windows. We would stay completely, and I'm just talking with what she said, away from masonite and gravitate more to the brick. We previously were in a masonite home in Redfields, now in a brick home in the eastern side of Albemarle County. The heat stayed in the home so much longer, and we underestimated the value proposition because we had one this time of a gas range and gas fireplaces, Clinton.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that this week points out that can become marketing opportunities for you that are also values of the home that a buyer can see. So I think that's part of it. Tankless hot water heater, as a for instance, is hugely efficient. I think you have buyers that are, if they're still looking right now, they tend to be more motivated. They tend to have more concrete ideas. And then I think there's some cons and some things you have to work on. If you happen to have a picture of your front yard during summer when everything is green, that's really helpful. Let's put it in an album and set it out, or send me a copy so that I can post it along with the listing. Because definitely during winter, the curb appeal is a little bit different.
Totally.
It was so pretty with the snow covering everything, and now it's mud. And so you need to give them an idea to the best you can of what it's like. And you have to be prepared for, getting out of the house in winter, which is a little more work. So keep the kids' jackets and gloves and everything in the car. Have the box ready to go so that if you've only got an hour in between getting home from work and kids from school to build a snack and leave, there's a little bit less prep.
Okay, so what has lost value then that otherwise would have been a marketing priority?
I think that's a really generic question. You mean for winter?
No, for listing a home. Now in 2022, in this COVID world, in this snowpocalypse world, what is not as big a priority for marketing a home that previously was?
Oh gosh, I don't know what would be bad.
I can't think of anything for that. I do want to add something to our other list, though. Where are you located for plowing priority? Because for me, this house and where I lived before in Scottsville, I was right off main roads, and it's wonderful to be the person who can make it out and get to where I need to go.
Which is also an opportunity with HOAs. If there are a lot of people that are dead set against HOAs, and if your client can talk about what they cover in terms of snow removal and service, that would be helpful.
We had our streets plowed within a few hours on Monday. Now, we didn't have electric or power until Saturday, but we were able to get to work, my family and I, and charge our devices and enjoy this heat versus the freezing cold. Michael Lyle is giving Nikki Chambliss some props. So are you seeing spring? Now, spring is a little bit away, but not that far. Spring and summer, how do you see that transpiring? Are we going to see seller's market even more? We know that rates are going to go up. We know that there's no inventory. We know the cost of goods of new construction is expensive. We know that new construction is a reflection, their prices, of that cost of goods and pinch supply chains, which certainly are going to trickle over to existing construction from a price point standpoint. They're comps in some ways or not. Are you seeing spring and summer as any time for a potential buyer to have less stress, or it's like, get ready, giddy up, it's going to be crazy times here?
I'm leaning toward the latter. I'm not trying to stress people out, but generally speaking, this is not exactly a low stress situation regardless, right? And now we've got low inventory, and that's not really going to change. There's not a lot we can do to change that right now, even with interest rates going up a little bit. While it impacts some people greatly, most people, it's still really cheap money.
Amanda Spagoni has got a
Hello,
comment. Amanda, we'll get to that here in a matter of moments. In fact, why don't we get to Amanda's comment? I had a purchaser, Keller Williams, one of Keller Williams' finest, Amanda Spagoni. I had a purchaser who contacted me over the weekend who did not get any manuals for the Nest thermostat or appliances, and after power loss had issues resetting the thermostat. So it's important to provide all the information on the new gadgets that are in homes too. That's important now more than ever. Amanda Spagoni. The fabulous Rick
thank
Spagoni's
you.
daughter. I love Rick Spagoni. Thoughts on that comment?
And if you're an on top of it agent, you can look these up online and have PDFs that you send to the purchaser when they close, so
Yeah?
that they have it in their hot little
Absolutely.
hands.
So you have Nest at your house?
I do not.
Yeah.
I have an Echo Bee.
Do you like it?
I love it.
Did it work well during the?
Well, I mean, as long as I had power.
As long as you have power.
But I also have 2 fireplaces, one gas and one wood. So my house is pretty set for these weather instances. But what I don't have is a gas range, which would have actually probably been more helpful than my fireplaces.
The gas range. Okay, you'll appreciate this. You're a mama. Okay.
I
am. We were mama of 2. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. My wonderful wife was boiling hot water on the gas range and using that for the bathtub for our 3.5-year-old.
Oh, nicely done.
She
And
was like-
wow, that's a lot of work.
150 years ago, carrying the hot water in pots to the tub, Nikki James.
When truly, like this last week, I don't know about you, but for me, it made me realize how much work life is without power and without our conveniences. Like there's so much that is just not going to happen because basic life needs are now high priority and take so much time.
Yeah, Quentin Beckham. I see the wheels turning.
My power just flickered, so my stuff was fine. And if worse comes to worse, I go to my neighbor's house that has a wood burning stove.
Do you have a generator?
No.
You do not. So you just lucked out with the power in the city. Well, Dominion prioritized the densely populated areas, so you stayed on. And are your utilities underground? And the second part of the question is, are underground neighborhoods going to be more valued with their utilities? I mean, because you take Bel Air neighborhood in Ivy, those are underground utilities in that neighborhood. Will that be a piece of marketing leverage for agents?
So not everything went out because of lines overhead. And if you get enough lines overhead down, even your underground utilities locally don't matter because the substation is down. So those are not a guarantee, although certainly it's nicer not to have it in the way. And if your internet and other stuff is underground, a tree can't take out one of those just at your house. So there's some advantages to that. I also think it depends on what kind of ground you're living in and how that was developed as to whether or not that is actually a potential and cost-effective way to do things. For me personally, we're close enough in town and we're on the old Martha Jefferson circuit. So even when we do lose power, it tends to come back on quickly, and a lot of times we just don't lose power. I do see, particularly as you move out from the city, it's not just about losing power, it's about how accessible are places with power to you. So for me to get to the office is a completely different proposition than some of my staff and agents in Scottsville. If we both have power go down, my opportunity to find a place with power quickly with less safety risk is a lot better than somebody that lives further out.
Okay, so here's a question, and this is do you have something to add to
Oh,
this?
no, we're good.
This
We're good.
is a question from Matthew, who watches the program here on Twitter. And this is something that I was wondering as well, and we may not have the answers to this, but it's a fair question. The trees that overhang the power lines throughout Central Virginia, we see them everywhere. Is it the responsibility of the utility company to trim and maintain those trees and keep them from overhanging the power lines? Is it the responsibility of VDOT, of the jurisdiction, or if it's an easement with Dominion on that land, is the responsibility of the property owners?
I think the reason for the width of the easement is to give Dominion the ability to cut them back. I don't know whose responsibility it is, but as you watch them repairing lines, they were going down first with the trucks, sawing up trees, cutting down potentially gonna break in a minute branches and getting those out of the way so that following behind them could come the folks with the lines and the new power poles.
I mean, isn't it odd that the trees were overhanging all the lines? I mean, it just seems so...
I mean, those trees just growing like they don't know that the easement is there. It's terrible.
I mean, it just... he's being tongue-in-cheek facetious there, and we appreciate his sarcasm. It's one of my favorite qualities of Quentin is the clever sarcasm. But don't you think it's like a recipe for disaster that the trees are overhanging the power lines? And a second part of the question is, why are the utilities not underground?
Oh, God, I don't know about that. I do know that it's been quite some time since we've had a snow like this, right?
That's
and
true.
That's really the biggest challenge is Mother Nature needs to be cleaned out. It's going to happen one way or another, whether it's a snowstorm or a derecho or a tropical storm coming through. But we haven't had one of those in a long time. So when we do, it's pretty disastrous, right?
Sir Neil Williamson is answering this question for us with a link to
Nice.
Dominion. I will get to this link in a matter of moments, Neil, so I can read Actually, it's a couple paragraphs, so I can read this
Nice.
directly. Customers often have questions about how and why Dominion Energy manages trees and plants near our power lines. We cut trees and brush adjacent to our rights of way, the areas around power lines, to maintain safe, reliable, and economic electric service and to provide quicker access for our crews. We follow the American National Standard for Tree Care Operations. So it's a Dominion's responsibility. It's Dominion's responsibility there, QB. That's very intriguing right there. Neil Williamson, thank you for that. Nicholas Erpy, hello. Bill McChenzie, hello. NBC 29, hello. So QB, former CAR president, I believe going to be on, if memory serves correct, the Virginia Association of Realtors board.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
When does that term start?
It's in process. It's current.
Okay, so you're on the VAR. You're on the VAR board
It started
right now.
December 1. Yes.
Okay, so you're on the VAR board. 2022, my friend. What are your Commonwealth-wide colleagues saying?
Ask me in another few weeks because we have our first big in-person meeting starting tomorrow.
Okay. So they've got to continue. I don't want to predict. You're the expert. I just learned from the experts. That's the great thing about this job. Elena Mangione, we'll get to this comment here in a matter of moments. I've got to think they see another 4, 7, 8% of uptick of values Commonwealth-wide.
I don't think anybody predicts housing values to drop just because of the low inventory.
Yep.
But there's a lot of other pressures besides the supply side that can affect prices and values. So obviously we're not expecting another crash, but for houses, we were just talking earlier, and I said this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it's true, the value of a house you cannot sell is zero. And
So price it right. Trusted advisor.
And there are things outside of that that also affect that. You know, there comes a low, you can only drop the price so low before you're devaluing your own asset. There's other things that can put downward pressure in terms of local job market, local economy, mortgage rates, people coming in and out. And we are fortunate enough that us and all of our surrounding counties here do have some buffer in the University of Virginia, in NJIC, JAG School, DIA, and other really big employers that we have.
Do you see any negative or lukewarm ramifications of the protection that UVA is offering this area, besides escalating prices?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So I agree 100% with what you said. This region is so insulated from national trends because of this behemoth called UVA. Do you see any concerns about this behemoth we call UVA?
I think everything is a trade-off. You know, we've been talking for a while now about properties that they own. It certainly makes more sense for them to purchase properties that are adjacent to what they already have. And it's usually not UVA, it's the foundation that's doing this. Many of those they purchase and hold for future need. And so tenants continue to be tenants, the commercial use continues. And we kind of like that in many ways because they're already sitting there with infrastructure around them. Most of the cost of developments is infrastructure versus the development itself. Not always true, but by and large. Getting power there, getting sewer, getting water, all of those things. So there is some trade-off because they're a very powerful force that in some ways feels like it does not have to participate in the normal community conversations that happen when we decide how land is used. And there's times that that's really true. With that comes the benefit that we have a lot of insulation for other events that are going on that keep our unemployment rates lower than the state average, that is lower than the national average, that continue to recycle houses for us as contracts change, and provide opportunity for locals that are going to be here for 20 years to have a good spring and summer market. We have good spring and summer markets across the country because it's a great time to move. And it's also when people are looking and there's a little better planning. We also have it here because this is when contracts are changing out. This is when people are being told they have to move into town, move out of town. And so everybody that's here locally, although those are competitors, also benefit from that constant recycling of inventory.
Nikki Chambliss.
Well, see, when you asked that question, where my brain went was when I first moved to this area, I had a shocking experience because of it being such a college town and trying to find a place to rent that was within what I had initially had as my budget, but I was competing with wanting like a 3-bedroom house where landlords could get, hundreds of dollars per room, and I'm one family looking at a family budget. It was very different. So that's when you asked that question, I was thinking of that aspect of it. But I think that's such a known thing here. It was my first time being in this area, though, and my first experience, while I had lived in a college town before, it was very small, very, I guess rural is kind of appropriate for that area, and not as highly impacted by that college in the way that we are. So that's when you asked about negative impact, that's kind of where my brain went. But I think the upside of that is that there's so much value there with the stability of our economy and with so many of the other smaller pieces that are provided with that.
The very renaissanced and well-traveled and likable Elena Mangione has this comment. We love you, Elena, if you cannot tell. We have seen Dominion come out and take out trees threatening lines. We also have an arborist come out every spring to evaluate our trees on our property with extended branches. I do not think that Dominion can come onto our property and trim trees. It is the property owner's responsibility.
It's the easement that makes the difference.
Yeah.
So if there is not an easement, and you're just talking about a tree that's only over your line that leads to the side of your house, that's your problem. If there is an easement, it's because it is a throughway of lines that affects more people than just you. If you look at Dominion's website, we're looking at pictures of lines traveling across mountains. And so it's a lot of high power carry. So if there is an easement, then they are responsible. That is a part of their trade-off for the easement. If there is not an easement on your property, then it is you.
How about this comment for Kelsey, from Kelsey for Quentin? Jerry, can you ask Quentin to follow up on his comments about HOAs and the importance of HOAs for me? And thank you, great show.
I think, a lot of people are opposed to HOAs. Now, I'm from California, where we have them all over the place because you need them to support the infrastructure. And in a lot of ways, these can become very good investments for owners in developments to help not just maintain power, but to provide services where you're paying a little bit each month as a group and you're using collective bargaining power to get good prices and not be hit with large individual bills as a single homeowner.
For example, plowing of streets.
Plowing of streets. If you had to pay for your 10 feet
of
road frontage every time it happened on an instant, that could be the one bill you couldn't afford that month.
Yeah, and then if you can't afford that bill that month, guess what happens?
And I encourage people,
house.
If you're in an HOA, read about it, learn about it, know what the rules and regs are, check out their budget. Even if it's only once or twice a year, show up and see what's going on at the meetings. Most of what we don't like about HOAs when we feel angry about them is when stuff seems to happen out of the blue and we're like, whoa, nobody told me yellow was going to be the color of all the new houses. I hate yellow. Show up. You have to take that step to be involved.
Nikki Chambliss.
Okay.
Scottsville area, inside and out. How was it impacted and how's it responding to snowpocalypse?
Well, for one, they're used to this, right? I mean, unless somebody has moved to the area in the last 3 years, this is not their first rodeo, right? And so people generally are prepared for losing power. They're already prepared for crappy internet because that's life with or without a snow storm, right? In many, many ways and areas. So, and that is one of the good things to come from something like this, something like COVID, is we're able to have bigger conversations around things like having better internet. It's 2022. Why do we not all have access to internet, right? So they're handling it. And generally speaking, as a community, they're really great about coming together to help and support each other. And I love that. I think what I get most concerned about in rural areas like that is somebody maybe who's elderly. Maybe they don't have access to somebody when this happens. If the cell phone's not working and if your power's out and you don't have heat, what do you do? Hopefully you have a really awesome neighbor who's going to check on you And most often that's what happens in a community like Scottsville.
Very nice take right there from Nikki Chambliss. You have that in downtown Charlottesville.
We do, because my little street of 6 homeowners, we all know each other. Everybody looks out for each other. It's a really great little community of folks. I wish everybody could experience that, because it makes loving where you live so much easier, because you love what lives around you as well.
So she responds, Kelsey, with, so basically it sounds like you guys are saying 2022 is going to be almost identical to 2021.
I think if we're talking about market statistics, you're going to see a little bit higher interest rates. The skyrocket of increasing home costs in terms of median sales price is probably not going to skyrocket like that. You're still going to see competition over.
Because what did it do year over year?
About 13%.
In 2021 versus 2020. That's a tremendous jump.
Hold on. Let's see if I have that information somewhere.
I think he may have that at his fingertips
I
over
hope
there.
so.
Let's see.
13% uptick. Good night. I think that's right. I think that's ballpark. What are you thinking, Chambliss?
Well, I think so. And I like what Quentin was saying is I think a lot of times we say that, hey, this year's going to be just like last, but it's not. It's going to be very similar. I think it's calming down, but calming down compared to last year isn't really calm compared to what if we go back just 3 years.
Well said.
So
Quick.
January, February 2020 versus January, February 2021, the median sale price went up 16.8%.
Good Lord. I almost spit my coffee out right there.
So
16.
so from 295 to 345, roughly. Understand that's a median, so it's the middle point where everything above it was more and everything beneath it was less, and that's where the median point was. And so some of that is because you have so many stacked up here and so many here that are coming up in small increments that your midpoint moves up in a way that's not necessarily linear. I don't think this value in housing is just going to disappear, though. So if you're expecting there to be a price plummet,
Yeah.
I
don't
don't
see that
believe
happening.
anybody
No.
sees that.
No.
I do think what you'll see, though, is even though this is, the houses are just as scarce, the Shark Week feeding frenzy over every new listing is probably not going to be the same way. There are certainly going to be those very popular, very beautiful, centrally located, perfectly priced, everything's fixed, totally updated, lawn looks great, first house on the market in spring in the school district you want, with high-speed internet and, free snowplows. Those will probably get some competition, but the rate and level of competition, I don't think any of us expect to be the same in 22 as what we've experienced the last 2 years.
What is the first-time home buyer price point roughly?
$345,000.
What do you say to those folks, Nikki Chambliss?
Well, I think that anybody who's
Because
thinking
you're counseling
about,
the agents that are dealing with first-time home buyers.
I cancel,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, that is definitely what I do. And I've also had a lot of this experience hands-on with past clients.
With you
right?
and you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And myself. And I think the important thing is right now I think people who have been accustomed to being able to see people around them be first-time home buyers with no down payment and all of that, it's not that those packages don't exist still, but I think people really need to focus on saving. I think being able to come into this with a down payment is going to be a life-changing thing.
What are you saying? Like down payment at what range? I mean, because is the 20% realistic anymore at 345?
I don't
That's
know
great
that-
if you have it, but I don't think that needs to be the
I don't
goal.
even think 20% is
No.
common anymore.
So we're
No.
talking what? 5 points, 5 points, 7 points?
There was a study by NAR that just came out, or statistics, where I want to say
National Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
where they said 20 years ago the average down payment was 20 to 25%, and the last 2 to 3, I can't remember the specifics, so Keith, if you remember it, correct me in the comments, it was closer to 7%. So if you can work up a 10% down payment, cool, and if you can get into a house with a fixed rate with good employment where we're going to fix your housing costs, but you're going to make money year over year over year, do it. Almost everybody in the world looks back to 10 years ago and says, oh, if I had just bought a house 10 years ago. Okay, so when are you going to decide it's been long enough? Is it going to take 10 years? Is it going to take 12? Is it going to take 14? It may be, you may have to buckle down for the first couple years, but do it.
Yep.
And when you're not sure, talk to people. You have your first investment house, right?
Yes, I do.
Who would have thunk?
Oh.
I mean, not to underestimate you,
No.
but
And let me tell you, because I bought it right before all of this shifted, I have reevaluated whether or not to hold on to it or not several times.
So what are you going to do?
I'm playing the long game.
Okay, you're going to hold it.
Absolutely.
Why were you thinking to sell it? Just because you could cash out at such a high level?
Could I? Yes.
Yeah.
But also, what am
Can
I
you
going
put it
to
in
do with
perspective?
that?
Can I ask?
Well, absolutely. So, well, not necessarily number-wise.
Okay.
So, well, what did
You
I
could give us
do?
percentage if you don't want to do numbers.
I bought it just below 200.
Okay.
Let's just put that out there. So,
Okay.
well, a little bit below 200.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of TLC needed, but there were a lot of perks to it,
Okay.
right? And right now I could probably put it on the market for, God, 230, 250, just off the top of my head.
Uh-huh.
But
And it sells all day, every day.
oh, absolutely. But what am I going to do with that money? Am I going to be able to put that into another investment that would be of that same value long term? And for me, this is a long-term thing. This is investing for my future, and I would so much rather just save a little more, get another down payment, and buy my next investment property and hang on to this.
So the second investment property, are you going to leverage the first to buy the second? Or are you going to do the cash game?
I'm actually leaning toward going more traditional and just having my
Smart.
15 to 20% down.
Smart.
Because knowing that math, the math works well enough. It's not ideal. But when you're first starting out, sometimes it's a matter of just getting your foot in the door, right? And for me, getting my foot in the door is more important than having the numbers be larger.
Where are you going to find the counterpoint?
Yeah.
You ready?
Go for it.
Where are you going to find the inventory you need at that price point for number two, though? That's a challenge, right?
Well, it is. So at the point that I'm looking at the lower end of the price range, which is what I am still doing personally, and I put my down payment down, that mortgage versus the rent that it will get, I can charge a reasonable rent and not go crazy, right? Because I don't want to. We've had that conversation before. And still be fine with mortgage versus rent, having the money to pay Ally Property Management, which is totally what I do now.
Nicely done.
Very excited there.
Very nicely done.
Because I just don't have
Suzanne
enough
Real?
of me to go around. And Suzanne makes things happen magically. I get texts that say, hey, this happened. My current rental just got new carpet. It's very exciting. I didn't have to do a thing. I just approved the color of the carpet. And actually I said, hey, one of these, please pick one. Right? So for me, I'm still looking, and I'm even thinking about another one at Lake Monticello. And I know a lot of people don't like that because of the double HOA, but to me, I find it worthwhile.
What's the monthly nut for HOA at Lake Monticello?
Shoot, I don't know.
Is that where the first one
I
is?
should know that. Yes.
The first
yes,
one is
it
there?
is. Yes,
Okay.
I pay it, and I don't think about those things because it just needs to get done. But yeah, it's not low, and to me, I think it provides a lot. You've got a community with a lake, and you've got the beaches, and you have
Golf.
golf.
Yeah.
I would have never added that to the list because I just
Police.
don't. But it is, and for all of the negatives that you can find, and if you're in the Facebook group, sometimes it's very interesting to read. There are just as many positives, if not more.
Sir Neil Williamson, President of Free Enterprise Forum, says, Quentin, the 20% mortgage down payment is not dead yet.
yes, but the article he's referencing is also including repeat buyers. So if I bought a house 10 years ago, I now have $100,000 in equity,
Huge cash position.
and I sell it, and I roll all of that into the next house, that might be my 20% down payment. So what I was referencing is if you're a first-time home buyer and you're only looking at a bank account to provide your down payment, most of those people are in the 3 to 7% range.
It seems, okay, I'm going to get out of your way on this one. This is a dynamic question. You can go a lot of ways here. It seems like the rollover buyer, the buyer who takes a current home and buys another one, is very much in the catbird seat here. And the first-time home buyer is in a position that is precarious or perhaps unrealistic in today's market.
But remember, everything that makes a transaction palatable or unpalatable to a seller is not just money. It's money plus process. And so in some ways, if I'm a first-time home buyer, I am unfettered in my ability to close quickly. I'm not asking you to sit with a pending sign in your yard while I try and sell my other house. Everything has a balance, and it's not always about the money. It's become a lot more work to get a deal from contract to close now, and a lot of that is because we have buyers that are exhausted that are paying really top dollar when you look at the last 2 years. And then the seller says, no, I'm not going to fix this. And they're angry and they say, well, then I'm out. And they pull out their get out of jail free card in the home inspection and off they go. Everything's a balance between process, timing, cooperation, and goodwill between all the parties.
Matthew on Twitter, what percentage of buyers are investors? Please ask your guest this question.
I don't know that I have an answer for that, honestly. I have not seen I know that based on how we look at mortgage rates and how we track mortgages, it's fair to assume that there was a big uptick in second home purchases. Whether those sorted out into investment versus vacation homes, I can't tell from the data. I still think there's a fair amount of investing going on because you have folks that are good, solid renters that are not yet in a place to purchase, and therefore this has created that market. In that market.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I had a deal that came across my desk on Thursday of last week, 14 Turtle Creek units from a big-time investor in this area. We'll say his initials are RS, who is looking to unload his portfolio in Turtle Creek of 14 units. And he's looking to sell the portfolio in totality as opposed to individual units. That right there, I thought, wow, the potential if those units were chopped up and sold individually and how that could impact the market as opposed to the portfolio in whole, which he's trying to unload. And that I saw as almost like a microcosm of how this market has shifted away, I hate to say this, from the first-time home buyer to those that have more deep pockets and resources to purchase. Because Turtle Creek certainly was seen in this area as an entry point neighborhood. Thoughts on that?
I think it's still an entry point neighborhood. The entry point has changed.
What do you think, Nikki Chambliss?
I think that for first-time home buyers, I think it would be a really good thing to shift from, and maybe, maybe I'm wrong in this, but I think sometimes people are like, oh, I want my dream home right now for my first home. And I don't think that's what a lot of people have done in the past that got them where they are. And I think maybe shifting from more of an investment perspective of, hey, how about buy something that works for you well and plan on in a few years renting it out and buying your next place. Or selling it and buying your next place. But personally, I'm going to advocate for investing in real estate and the opportunity I get. I'm a fan of it. I think it's a life-changing thing that just about anybody could do, right? Given some time and resources and readjusting life. So I think that maybe not looking for that house that you're going to die in, because most people aren't really going to buy that as their first-time home purchase. And kind of saying, hey, what works for now? Hey, my kids are this age. This is what I want long-term. Can this be a stepping stone instead of a final destination?
Can it be a 5-year house?
Can it be a 5-year house? Why not? 5, 7 years, even 10 is longer than some people are actually staying in homes now. And then when I move from this, you're now buying not a second home, not an investment property. You're buying your home, so you're getting those lower interest rates for buying a home. And your home you just bought with lower interest rates because it was your first time home purchase now is your investment. And that a lot of military people do that because they move around, and it's a really good way to do that. Personally, if I just didn't love being in the house that I'm in right now and where it's located, I would do that in a heartbeat. I can make so much from that renting it and just getting something else. But I'm not done with this one yet. So I think that's a huge plus and a good way to go.
And frequently, even with rates up, what you're sort of doing is for something you actually need, I'm saying to you, hey, I'm going to give you $400,000 and you're going to pay me 4% interest, and you're probably going to earn 8 to 10 on it until you give it back to me.
That's well said right there.
Yeah.
So the math is always there. It is consistently there.
Plus the tax advantages.
There's tax advantages,
Yes.
and you're saving on your expense side once you've fixed your living cost. Because if you're renting, it's going to continue to climb. Mm-hmm. And it's harder and harder to find rents that are appreciably cheaper on the same square footage, same style of living.
Than the interest on a mortgage.
Yes. Even if the mortgage rates go up every quarter point that is predicted in 2023. 2022.
That right there is beautifully said, succinctly said. So the obvious question, Bill Hamrick, hello, welcome to the show. Allison Noel, hello, welcome to the show. The obvious question is, why do we not have more housing? And Neil Williamson will love that question. Why do we not have more housing?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. We saw a huge drop off in the market crash because we're really talking about since the great time of unpleasantness, because everything stopped, dead stop. And you had so many smaller regional developers that went out of business. You had to have builders realign, and they entered more cautiously into their development. And we have not lived, us locally anyway, the move from proposal to shovel is such a time span that it's really hard to move things forward at the rate that we see, and you don't know if the market is going to be different by the time you get there. So how do you even predict that? This is complicated by right now the fact that I think garage doors are still on boats somewhere in the middle of the ocean because they can't get here.
Yes.
Those things will solve themselves, but we have underbuilt houses for 20 years. And it's just, we're paying for that right now.
Nikki Chambliss, what are you thinking?
No, I agree. And I was actually trying to see if I could find a quick data point here, and I can't. But my understanding, because I didn't live in this area until 2009, I think.
Okay.
I don't know, something like that. So I haven't seen all of that history, and that's still a considerable amount of time. But from everything I've learned and read and checked in on is we just haven't built enough new homes over the last many, many years. And truly, like you said, that is catching up. It has caught up, and it's painful. This is now the market that we have.
This is now the market we have. Quentin Beckham, Nikki Chambliss. I think we ask for patience, stick-to-itiveness, understanding from potential buyers. Ask sellers to be reasonable. Ask sellers to reach out to a trusted advisor. And still they're in the catbird seat. Any thoughts as we close?
Just remember that you're not in this alone. We are in it with you. And really, seriously, define the kind of house you need before you start to go looking for the house you want. And work with an agent on that so that we can say back to you what you said to us when you were being really logical sitting in our office versus standing in the middle of the house that you're in awe of. Because that's where people tend to get wrapped up and sometimes make bad decisions. I want you to really love the house before you go through the work, but a lot of loving the house is having that long-term usefulness out of it, so be very clear on what you need, be very clear on what you can afford, and yes, be ready to tighten your belt for a few years, but be clear on what you can afford, and then let us help you get to houses that check those boxes.
This is a great comment. That's why I threw this out there. It was for you, Neil. Less than 5% of Albemarle County's land mass is designated for development. And within the development area, supervisors are approving less density. So I'll add to that. Less than 5% of Albemarle County is allocated for development. And within that 5%, it's not just residential, it's also commercial development. And of that 5%, not all of it has the topography to be developed.
Yeah.
And supervisors are approving less density within that 5%. I mean, that right there really puts it in perspective. Free Enterprise Forum for more information there from the Content Slinger. Nikki Chambliss, how about a closing final word for you?
Oh man, it's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy start to the year.
It's been bananas, right?
It has been bananas.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yet we still are in an area where people come together, where they care about each other, where they help lift each other up and literally out of the snow, right? And that's an amazing thing. And it makes a world of a difference.
Well said. Well said. QB, job well done. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Nikki Chambliss, the Monday Market Monitor. We love you on a Monday.
Awesome. I love being here.
Thank you for joining us on the show. Keller Williams Alliance, Yes Realty Property, Yes Realty Partners, Allied Property Management, Closure Title and Settlement Company, and Segura Solar, partners of the Monday Market Monitor, trusted brands in this game we call real estate. and arguably the most difficult decision outside of who you marry in life. For Quentin Beckham, Nikki Chambliss, and Judah Wickower, my name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us on a gorgeous Monday to be above the mud. Take care. Job well done.
Thank you, everyone.